Midnight thunder cracked as the courthouse door slammed, and the echo crawled through Amina's chest like smoke. Malik stood in the doorway, all steel and shadow, and power wrapped his voice. Malik said, "Sign, and the storm ends." She clutched the pen like a shard. Amina said, "You do not own my name." Rain hammered the windows as if begging her to run. His gaze did not flinch. Malik said, "This protects your family and mine." Her breath shook. The paper smelled like ink and cages. Jada's messages flashed on her phone, unanswered and frantic. Amina said, "I will not be your trophy." Malik stepped closer, softer than rumor, colder than marble. Malik said, "You will be my wife." The word wife felt like a verdict and a vow, both burning. Somewhere a siren wailed, thin and distant, like a choir that lost its hymn. Amina said, "If I sign, you tell me why me." His jaw tightened, as if secrets had teeth. Malik said, "Because the truth prefers you alive." Lightning photographed their faces and left a white scar in the air. The pen scratched, a small scream on paper. She signed, and the storm smiled. The corridors smelled like wet stone and fresh surrender as they walked out side by side, yet worlds apart. Amina said, "You planned this storm." Malik did not answer, but his silence carried 1,000 contracts. The clerk pretended not to stare, counting forms like rosary beads. Amina said, "Tell me what you are protecting me from." He pressed the elevator button with a steady hand. Malik said, "Men who think your name is currency." The bell chimed, and the doors parted like a verdict. They faced the mirrored walls and found two strangers wearing their faces. Amina said, "You are not my savior." The elevator slid down, a coffin wrapped in chrome. Malik said, "I do not want worship, only order." Her laugh came out thin as thread. The lobby lights turned their shadows into long warnings. Amina said, "Order without consent is a prison." He paused at the exit, rain thinning to a hush. Malik said, "Freedom without safety is a myth." The doors opened to a city that looked rinsed of mercy. Outside, the city steamed like a wounded animal, and sirens stitched the blocks together with red thread. Jada called again, her name bright on the screen. Amina said, "I need you." The call connected, and the rain turned whisper soft. Jada said, "Where are you? And why does your voice sound like glass?" A black car slid to the curb as if summoned. Malik said, "Get in, we will not argue curbside." Amina stood still, a monument to refusing. Jada said, "Girl, speak before silence makes choices for you." A taxi horn snapped the air. Amina said, "He forced a marriage to keep wolves back." The phone went quiet enough to hear her heartbeat. Jada said, "I am coming. Pin your location." Malik opened the rear door and watched her decide. Amina said, "If I enter, I keep my dignity in the front seat." Malik said, "Then sit in the front." The city exhaled as she walked. The car smelled like leather and stormwater, and the city's noise softened to wool. Malik drove without music, turning corners like chess moves. Amina said, "Who are the wolves?" He checked the mirror as if it might answer. Malik said, "Investors who confuse appetite with blessing." She watched raindrops race across the windshield like anxious beads. Amina said, "Then why me, not another name to barter?" He flexed his hands once on the wheel. Malik said, "Because you will not break where others might." The compliment wore handcuffs. She turned to the window and saw her face divided by streetlights. Amina said, "Strength should not be a reason to cage me." He exhaled, and the air tasted like old battles. Malik said, "Call your friend, let her witness you safe." She nodded despite herself, and safety felt like a borrowed coat. The skyline rose, sharp and judging. They stopped outside Amina's apartment where the awning dripped like a tired metronome. The street was empty enough to keep secrets. Amina said, "You will not step past my door." He nodded once, and the nod felt like a contract with daylight. Malik said, I will send documents to secure your mother's clinic. Her chest tightened at the word clinic, a door in her memory opening. Amina said, if you ever hold that over me, we are finished. He met her eyes, and for a moment his power looked weary. Malik said, I do not trade with grief. Upstairs, a window light flicked on like a blessing. Jada said, I am at your floor, and I brought tea and opinion. Amina's laugh broke like sun through ash. Malik said, I will wait in the car until she arrives. She stepped onto the curb and felt the ground vote for her. Amina said, Good night, husband made of storms. The word husband tasted like salt and thunder. Morning peeled the night from Amina's eyes while tea steamed between her and Jada. Jada said, You sound married to a hurricane. Amina traced the mug rim like a prayer she did not trust. Amina said, He called it safety and made it law. Jada's brows lifted the way truth lifts a veil. Jada said, What do you want beneath the paperwork? The kettle clicked like a tiny verdict. Amina said, I want love that does not ransom my mother's clinic. Silence moved through the kitchen like a slow tide. Jada said, Wanting is holy, but boundaries are armor. Amina nodded and felt the nod settle in her spine. Amina said, I will write terms, not vows. The city brightened as if eavesdropping. Jada said, Make him sign your storm. They walked a clinic hallway where posters curled and hope smelled like antiseptic. Malik carried a folder, heavy with favors and ghosts. Amina said, This place kept my mother alive long enough to raise me. He glanced at the peeling paint as if it were a ledger. Malik said, Vendors will be paid by noon. A nurse waved with a tired smile that still shone. Amina said, Do not buy my gratitude with charity. He stopped beside a plaque with her mother's name. Malik said, I respect what built you. Wind rattled the exit door like nervous applause. Amina said, Respect looks like letting me lead here. His jaw eased a fraction. Malik said, Then lead, and I will not interfere. At her mother's apartment, framed photos lined the mantel like small witnesses. Jada arranged takeout and courage on the table. Jada said, Tell her before the city tells her. Amina breathed in the jasmine candle and the weight of being the only child. Amina said, She taught me to choose dignity without apology. Knuckles tapped the door in a rhythm Amina knew. Mother, said child, why do your eyes hold lightning? Amina took her hands and let the truth stand upright. Amina said, I signed a marriage to shield the clinic. Silence landed, careful and fierce. Mother said, Shielding is love, but love must not erase you. Amina felt a bright ache and nodded. Amina said, I will not disappear. Twilight gathered on a rooftop where the city looked breakable and brave. Malik stood at the ledge counting thoughts he would not spend. Amina said, Tell me the part you are hiding from yourself. Wind braided her words and set them loose. Malik said, Men who funded me now hunt favors with claws. A siren stitched a distant block and vanished. Amina said, You do not fix violence by caging me inside your name. His shoulders lowered as if surrender were a language he barely knew. Malik said, I do not know love without control. Her heart winced at the honesty. Amina said, Learn a better way or lose me to silence. The city lights flickered like 1,000 held breaths. Back home, Amina spread blank pages like territory and drew borders with ink. Jada said, Write clauses that make your future breathe. The lamp cast a patient circle on the desk. Amina said, Financial transparency, clinic autonomy, no public claims without consent. Her pen moved like a drumbeat. Jada said, Add therapy, both of you, not as punishment but practice. The words surprised Amina and felt right. Amina said, Weekly sessions and a sunset clause if trust fails. Thunder grumbled far away as if the storm was reading along. Jada said, Send it tonight, make the myth meet paper. Amina sealed the envelope and felt the room stand with her. Malik read Amina's terms, while morning clattered against his office windows like coins. Amina said, clinic autonomy, joint audits, therapy weekly, sunset if trust breaks. He looked up as if the paper had drawn blood. Malik said, you negotiate like a rival. Her pulse steadied, surprised by pride. Amina said, I negotiate like a woman who will not vanish. His tie sat perfect, but his certainty frayed. Malik said, therapy is exposure. She leaned forward, soft and precise. Amina said, control is a mask that starves breathing. He tapped the desk, counting the cost of surrender. Malik said, I will sign, but I lead the schedule. She nodded once, and let victory stay quiet. Phones lit up like brush fires as a gossip site screamed about their secret vows. Celine Ward stepped from a black SUV, with a smile bright as a warning. Celine said, we manage fallout or drown in it. Amina's jaw set, but her voice stayed velvet. Amina said, we do not package me like crisis perfume. Cameras clicked, tiny hammers on glass hearts. Malik, said Celine, we speak inside. Celine drifted closer, perfume expensive as history. Celine said, public loves, a fairy tale with teeth. Amina felt heat climb but chose precision. Amina said, draft a statement that protects the clinic first. Malik watched, calculating who was saving whom. At the clinic, a supplier threatened to pause deliveries until Malik cleared old debts. The waiting room breathed anxious air that tasted like metal. Jada said, we cannot treat hope on credit. Amina placed calls with steady lightning in her tone. Amina said, release oxygen and antibiotics today or lose our contract forever. A nurse squeezed her arm as if to borrow courage. Malik arrived carrying signatures like shields. Malik said invoices are paid and interest forgiven. Relief moved through the hall like warm rain. Amina said, next time, I choose the vendor. He nodded, learning the shape of partnership. The charity gala glittered like a crown built from fragile glass promises. A violin line stitched through murmurs and envy. Celine said, smile, or donors will smell doubt. Amina looped her arm through Malik's but owned the step. Amina said, we are here for the clinic, not your legend. A man with a checkbook sized like a threat approached. Donor, said marriage, steadies markets. Malik's laugh was a blade wrapped in silk. Malik said, we steady people, not markets. Selinan's eyes flashed with quiet fury. Amina said, then fund care without strings. The donor's grin cracked. After the gala, the car held silence like a crystal that feared shattering. Street lights slid over their faces in gold bars. Amina said, you fought for dignity in there. He drove slower than pride. Malik said, you made me remember why I built any of this. Her hand hovered near the console and stopped. Amina said, do not make me choose between love and air. His reply was a quiet ache. Malik said, help me learn how to hold both. A blocked number flashed and broke the moment. Voice said, tell Amina her past debt is due. The call ended, and the night leaned closer. The blocked call replayed in Amina's chest like a drum she could not silence. Morning found her at the clinic, where sunlight dared to soften the edges of worry. Malik said, it was a debt tied to my father, not you. She studied his face, searching for cracks behind the stone. Amina said, secrets corrode, love faster than enemies. Nurses passed with trays, pretending not to overhear the storm at reception. Malik said, I built my empire to erase his sins. She whispered back, sharp as glass. Amina said, then why chain me to silence? Oh. He reached for her wrist, but she pulled away. Amina said, if we survive this, truth signs before love does. The hallway chilled with unfinished answers. That evening, Celine waited in the lobby of Malik's tower, her expression a riddle sharpened by ambition. Celine said, the press already whispers his father's debts into your name. Amina paused, heels clicking like accusations. Amina said, let them whisper, my clinic still breathes. Celine's smile grew thinner, colder. Celine said, but debts breed vultures and vultures draw blood. Malik entered, and the air shifted like thunder arriving. Malik said, Celine, enough. We build solutions, not fires. Amina looked between them and felt betrayal circle her ribs like a tightening rope. Amina said, when truth hides, everyone bleeds. Silence swelled in the marble lobby until the elevator swallowed them whole. In her apartment, Amina opened a locked box she had not touched in years. Inside lay letters from her absent father, edges yellowed, words that smelled of regret. Jada sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes soft but unflinching. Jada said, that voice on the phone sounded like your shadow. Amina traced the letters as if touching scars. Amina said, he left debts the way storms leave wreckage. Jada's hand covered hers, grounding. Jada said, you cannot heal with silence choking the roots. Tears blurred ink that once promised return. Amina said, if he is back, Malik's enemies are mine twice over. The room felt smaller, as if walls leaned to hear her secret. Malik confronted Celine in the office, with blinds drawn tight against the city. Malik said, you knew my father's debts would surface. Celine did not flinch, only tilted her head like a predator in thought. Celine said, I protect your image, not your ghosts. His voice dropped, low as a blade. Malik said, do not use her name to clean my past. She smirked, sharp as broken glass. Celine said, her name already bleeds in headlines. He gripped the desk until wood creaked. Malik said, cross her again, you lose this firm. The silence afterward was a treaty written in threat. The rooftop saw them again, where city winds carried confessions heavier than rain. Amina said, my father's shadow is knocking at my door. Malik's chest tightened, eyes tracing skyscrapers like escape routes. Malik said, if he resurfaces, our marriage becomes war armor. She gripped the railing, metal biting her palms. Amina said, marriage is not armor, it is supposed to be sanctuary. His voice trembled for the first time. Malik said, I do not know if I can be sanctuary. She turned to him, tears bright and fierce. Amina said, then you learn, or you lose me. The skyline glittered, indifferent to vows and wounds alike. The night of the confrontation broke like glass across the city. Amina arrived at the gala's after-party where whispers sharpened into blades. Her absent father stood at the edge of the room, older, hollow-eyed, shadow clinging to him like smoke. Amina said, why return now when scars have barely closed? His voice cracked with practiced sorrow. Father said, I came to claim what debt never forgives. Malik's hand closed over hers, grounding yet shaking. Malik said, her life is not collateral. The room hushed as though walls learned to breathe slower. Amina said, you abandoned me, and now you bargain with my name. His silence was guilt carved deep. She lifted her chin like armor. Amina said, you will not write my future with the ink of your failures. The confrontation spilled into a private hall lined with mirrors. Reflections stretched their pain into infinite shapes. Father said, the clinic stands on loans I brokered. Blood is its foundation. Amina's breath hitched, but she steadied. Amina said, then I will cleanse it with truth, not chains. Malik stepped closer, voice iron and regret. Malik said, erase his claim, and let the future breathe. Father's eyes flared with a desperate pride. Father said, she is mine to protect from men like you. Amina turned, voice cutting the hall in two. Amina said, I belong only to myself. Her reflection stared back like a twin ready to fight. Storm cracked above as if the city echoed their breaking voices. On the rooftop, thunder framed their silhouettes. Malik said, I chose empire over healing, and it has poisoned us. Amina's hair whipped like fire in the wind. Amina said, then choose healing now, or lose me forever. Father's laughter rose, bitter and broken. Father, said healing, is for those who can pay. Malik struck forward, voice slicing air. Malik said, "Your debts end tonight, no matter the cost." Amina closed her eyes, heart torn between fury and pity. Amina said, "I will not drown in old sins. I choose my own name." Lightning revealed the truth on their faces, raw and merciless. The storm forced them inside, but rage did not cool. In Malik's office, shattered glass from a broken tumbler sparkled across the floor. Amina said, "Secrets rot us from within." Malik's voice cracked, stripped bare. Malik said, "I feared if you knew, you would see me as him." Her tears cut down her cheeks like lightning scars. Amina said, "I see you only when you tell me truth." He dropped into the chair, as though his power weighed too much. Malik said, "Then stay, and I will dismantle the empire until it serves people, not ghosts." Silence thickened, heavy as dawn. Amina stepped closer, breath trembling. Amina said, "Then let me walk with you, not behind you." Climax bled into stillness, as dawn cracked pale over the horizon. They stood by the window, city glowing fragile beneath them. Malik said, "I cannot erase my father, but I can rewrite what his name built." Amina's voice carried both steel and mercy. Amina said, "Do it with me, not for me." He reached for her hand, fingers trembling for the first time. Malik said, "Then, we rise or fall together." Her heart pounded with fear and fierce hope. Amina said, "Together, but only if tomorrow is truth." The sun broke free, painting their faces gold and scarred. Their silence finally felt like an oath worth keeping. Morning steadied the city while their oath from dawn cooled into plans. Amina said, "We start with audits and therapy booked before noon." Malik unlocked his calendar like a vault yielding air. Malik said, "My board will resist, but resistance is a teacher." She drafted timelines, building a bridge from fire to function. Amina said, "The clinic publishes monthly reports without edits." He nodded, learning the music of transparency by beat. Malik said, "Vendors get human terms, not traps in fine print." She watched hope move like light under a door. Amina said, "We protect staff from donors who trade care for clout." He exhaled, shedding armor that had long grown heavy. Malik said, "I will announce restitution funds for families harmed." The room felt wider, like walls learned to breathe again. The first therapy session smelled faintly of citrus and books, quiet as rain. Dr. Hale waited with a gaze that did not hunt or hide. Amina said, "Control masqueraded as safety until it bit." Malik's hands laced, unclenching by degrees. Malik said, "Power kept me from begging, then taught me to command." She met his eyes, and chose softness that did not surrender. Amina said, "I need partnership that breathes, not a throne." The doctor wrote a word that looked like doorway. Dr. Hale said, "Trade certainty for curiosity and see what survives." Silence settled without threat, almost kind. Malik said, "I will risk being seen without armor." Her breath eased, a bridge built across old rivers. At the clinic, change arrived with receipts and relief. Vendors signed new contracts that honored time and dignity. Jada said, "This is how institutions apologize without speeches." Amina smiled, small and earned. Amina said, "Care grows when numbers tell the truth." A mother thanked them with a hug that smelled of peppermint and grit. Malik watched, quiet, as pride shifted into service. Malik said, "I used to count wins in towers, not hallways." She touched the bulletin where policies now lived in daylight. Amina said, "Keep counting the people who make it home." The waiting room felt like a river after the dam broke right. The public statement went live at noon, crisp as winter light. Celine read it twice before sending, her edge wrapped in duty. Celine said, "We center the clinic and outline restitution, no romance theater." Amina approved with a nod that protected her boundaries. Amina said, "No photos of me without consent on medical floors." Malik adjusted a line about his father, like removing a thorn. Malik said, I accept responsibility for harm my structures caused. The post traveled fast, trading rumor for architecture. Celine said expect questions with teeth, and some with grace. Amina breathed, and let courage stay ordinary. Malik said, we answer, then we work. The city did not cheer, but it listened. Evening gathered on their rooftop again, wind milder now, stars patient. Amina said, today we chose repair over spectacle. Malik leaned on the railing without reaching for control. Malik said, I felt small and did not die. She laughed, a sound like a healed seam. Amina said, small is honest, and honest is strong. He turned, asking with his eyes before moving closer. Malik said, may I hold your hand without owning it? She placed her palm in his, steady as a promise with room to grow. Amina said, yes, and we keep space for breath between us. The city glowed below, like 1,000 warm windows. Their quiet did not pretend the past was gone, only faced it. The final week carried silence like a slow drum beat. Headlines cooled, though whispers still lingered in corners. Amina said, healing is not applause, it is daily choosing. Malik stood at the balcony, morning light soft on his shoulders. Malik said, I used to chase silence as if it meant control, but now, it means peace. She poured coffee, hands steady for once. Amina said peace is not free, it is earned. He turned, and his eyes held something unguarded. Malik said, I want to keep earning it, with you if you let me. Her heart swelled, stitched together by scars and breath. Amina said, then stand beside me, not in front. Outside, the city stretched awake, less storm, more promise. The clinic unveiled its new wing, walls painted fresh hope over old wounds. Children played in the waiting area, laughter echoing. Amina said, this is what survival looks like when it chooses growth. Jada handed her a folder with new policies inside. Jada said, no wolves in fine print, no blood in contracts. Malik stood by the doorway, quiet pride curling at his lips. Malik said every dollar accounted for, every vendor paid on time. The mayor cut the ribbon, cameras flashing like brief fireworks. Amina whispered to herself, Mother, this is for you. The wind carried her vow into the bricks, and the building seemed to breathe. That night, Jada teased Amina with laughter sweet and sharp. Jada said, who knew marriage papers could become battle plans? Amina leaned back, wine glass half full. Amina said, I didn't marry a savior, I married a man learning. Jada's grin softened. Jada said, and you, learning to let someone stand without carrying your whole sky. They clinked glasses, the sound like tiny bells announcing truth. Amina said, we still bleed, but now we bandage together. Silence sat with them, not heavy but companionable. Jada said, then maybe you found love worth scars. Amina smiled, eyes glistening with something steadier than relief. On the rooftop again, stars spilled over them like fragile diamonds. Malik said, I feared losing you more than I feared losing power. She tilted her head, smile aching but real. Amina said, and I feared vanishing until I saw you choose truth. He reached into his pocket and placed a ring on the railing. Malik said, this is not the contract. This is a promise remade. Her breath caught, heart loud in her ears. Amina said, a promise only if we keep walking as equals. He nodded, eyes wet and unashamed. Malik said equals or nothing at all. The night held them without judgment, only quiet blessing. The final dawn rose sharp and tender, washing scars in gold. Amina stood at the window, hand pressed to glass. Amina said, storms carved me, but love taught me to breathe after thunder. Malik wrapped his arms around her waist without weight, only warmth. Malik said, I will not save you, but I will walk with you until my steps give out. She leaned back into him, steady as roots. Amina said, and I will not cage you, but I will remind you that power is nothing without mercy." They stood in silence, letting light settle their faces. The city stirred below, unaware of the battles won. Their love did not erase the scars. It lived with them, fierce, fragile, unforgettable.